Hello again, Ian Stokey with Mastermind Games, back for more Malifaux, and this time the Neverborn Master Nekima, fair skin 09047. So a Nephilim, Nekima is the older sister of Lilith, and Lilith basically took control of the Nephilim where Nekima should have, through, quite frankly, being more clever. Lilith is definitely the smarter of the two, while Nekima is more of a wrecking ball. Formerly a henchman, she betrayed her sister and seized control of the Nephilim, with Lilith being mortally wounded and entombed in, I can't remember if it's Nithra or Kithra, they are basically on top of each other, by Zoraida in order to save her life. So Lilith is temporarily out of the game for now. Honestly, after reading the fiction concerning most of the Dead Man's Hand, I believe they're all able to come back at some point. Ramos is imprisoned. Lilith is being converted into an undead, basically, in the ruins she's imprisoned in. Nicodeme's soul was captured in a soul stone, so he could come back in some form or another, and Collodi is, his head is still very active and aware and is hanging out in Lucius Matheson's rec room. But Nekima as a... gotta be careful with his tail. This is an older sculpt, by the way. He's got a new sculpt, but I like this one better. She is wearing clothes, so just leave that be. I'm using a large brush right off the bat because of all the surface area, especially on her wings. Now she looks a bit like a succubus in this sculpt. She is the type of creature that would rather devour your skin than show you a good time. While Lilith adopted a human form, Nekima prefers more of a Neverborn look, though it looks like her new sculpt is more human than this. I'm really trying to get that under her hair there, that bit of wing. And I am not doing the wings a separate color, which some would, because this is part of her body. And bat-like wings, while they are specialized hands, and this is essentially the skin color. I'm going to play around with the highlighting and shading, though. Got this a little thick in some places, not thick enough in others. I shouldn't need a second coat, though. Alright, I think that's pretty good. A little more right there next to that skull on her shoulder. Okay. There's one more thing I can do. I'm just going to take a little Woodstain Brown 09160 and get the dirt. And that's just right here. So the rock is part of the model itself. Okay. Thin that out. Yeah, the colors I put on the sword will cover it up easily, but still. Oh, and I dropped 120 plus frames in a matter of a few seconds, so let that dry and come back in a bit. Okay. Next, I'm going to take Tarnished Steel 09206, their blade, well, part of her blade anyway. If I'm going to use the term correctly, I should be saying blade of the sword. Let's put that light up a bit so that helps a little, but Alright. Yeah. So, more recently, after seizing control of the Nephilim, which Nekima did in part by making a devil's deal with Titania, she visited these Gargants, I think they're called. Euripides, I believe, is the master of that group, who demanding he give her a little insight into her future. And next, blonde hair, 09257. And that insight involved that she would die at the hands of Jacob Lynch and his partner, the Hungering Darkness. So it's one of those self-fulfilling prophecies, because in attempting to wipe him out before he became a threat, she wound up setting the event in motion with an alpha strike that left most of her agents dead. She also experimented with trying to mutate humans into Nephilim-like creatures through ritual and her species' own black blood, which had results. Specifically, the what are they called? Tuco Ortega Angel Eyes and Blood Rushes. That's what I'm thinking of. And she still makes use of them, but they are nothing more than cannon fodder to her, and never were. Now, Alien Purple, I had a strong indication. I had a strong idea of gold and violet for a color scheme. And again, when you think about the tail and wings, I mean, they are part of her skin, her flesh, so why wouldn't they be the same color as the rest of her? But I'm playing around with the shading and highlight, or the shading there. Just going along, getting her clothing. What there is of it. And it looks like her top ties off above her wings, but at least they didn't cheat on that. That's something that personally drives me crazy when a winged character has their wings magically appear through the back of clothing. Just a pet peeve of mine. Then the bracers. To make sure I keep my paint refreshed in here and my brush moist but not overly wet. That's got too much water in, so I'm just gonna blot that out with a paper towel. Try again, slightly better. I just realized I got a red violet as well that would work well with this. So, but I made my choice and I am gonna stick with it. Okay. And I'll do the bindings on her legs as well. So just go up and down the entirety. And just say her legs are kind of wrapped up like a mummy's. I'm hoping by the time I get this done that the flesh will be dry, or that the hair will be dry enough I can move on to the horns. Probably not, so you know what, I'm not going to worry about it. It's going to be at least one more clip anyway to finish this, so... Alright. Well... Shoot. I think I might have just screwed that up there a little bit, but I'm just trying to get the, tie she's got for a ponytail. Alright. Oh, missed a bit on the foreleg here. Alright. Well, and I dropped 400 frames in the blink of an eye. Alright. Alright. Then I'll let that dry and move on. Okay. Where am I at? Yellowed Bone 09143. Which is about empty, but I should have enough to do the job, and if it isn't, got a spare on hand. Getting those big, beautiful horns here. Making sure I get on the sides as well. On the back. And these were a pain to get on, and they're going to make me very nervous during highlighting because they have tiny connection points to her head. I think I said shading there, I meant highlighting. It's early in the morning and the day is already off to a very rough start for me. And these spurts of bone from the wing and then on the wing tips. And I know they don't stand out too much from the flesh tone right now, but they will because I'm going to be playing around with the shade on that flesh tone to make it less human looking, more monstrous. But that's going to happen after I finish the base coats here. And the hooves, yeah, do the hooves. I'm just going to leave those two and the rock. So, antique gold 09050. Which this one's about empty. That should be enough to do the job. Again, I'm using just enough water to thin the paint. I'm keeping my brush moist but not overly wet. And I get that on the skin. I'm just going to take a little water, blot that out, soak it up with a paper towel. I could do this as a skull, but the same bone color, but I think I like the idea of this being more ornamental. Even the Neverborn, even the Nephilim have their sacred relics and treasures, even if many of them wear little more than loincloths and use little more than their claws and teeth. But, and I say that because in one of the second edition books, in a bit of fiction involving Zoraida, Lilith, and Pandora, Lilith ran into a Neverborn Nephilim, I believe, shape-shifting, and caught him selling relics to the guild for money, promising horrible retribution later. And uniform gray for the last base coat. Gonna take a gamble, and I missed a little bit on the hoof here, and right there. I'm gonna take a gamble and just get the rock now. Get base coats done, and then I can start shading. And I use some Army Painter colors right now because the Reaper Master Series I prefer was unavailable completely locally. And then with everything shut down and no ability to get new paint and having to go online anyway, I just went back to my preferred brand. So there you have it. Gotta be real careful around her feet. Again, hooves in this case. Seems all, or most, Neverborn native to Malifaux. And I say it that way because some of them are not. Zoraida, for example, is Neverborn in spirit, and Kalodi was created and not necessarily native, but seem to have some shape-shifting ability. Lilith took a completely human form to better operate in Malifaux, and though Nekima seems to prefer her something more natural, Nephilim do mutate rapidly and grow when exposed to blood, especially human blood, and can go from Terror-Tot, their infant form, to their juvenile form, to young Nephilim, their adolescent form, to mature Nephilim, their adult form, very rapidly. I've done Terror-Tots previously. I don't have any other Nephilim yet, but I will eventually. I'm not certain when. Okay, you touch up there, but that's base coats, so once this dries, I can start shading. So, back in a bit. Alright, time to shade, and I'm going to start with Blond Shadow 09256. Yeah, do this. Turn that speed a bit. Okay. Thinning with 1 part water to 1 part paint, making it into a wash. Just going over the hair. I'm not too concerned if I hit the flesh because I'm going to be putting something pretty dark on that to shade with. And then Ancient Bronze 09049. I was kind of hoping to put gold trim on her top and bottom, but it's not really, there's not enough space to work with there, so I can still at least do some semblance of my violet and gold I envisioned. flow around the crevices here. Need a little more blonde right there. And I'm going to need to let that dry. So, getting there. Back a bit. Okay. Some of that last layer is still drying, but it's dry enough I can move on. Blackened. You know what? I better end with that one because I'm more likely to hit something I don't want to hit. We'll start with a more difficult one. Nightshade Purple 09022. And then I'm going to switch to the finest brush I have. Still thinning with 1 part water to 1 part paint. Now this is actually going to be darker than what I used to shade the skin with, so I need to make certain I have very fine control here. Just painting a thin little line, and I might have to touch up some of the flesh after this. Okay, that was the tricky part. I can loosen up on the gauntlets, or bracers maybe. Looks like leather more than metal. Bindings on the legs. I think I might have my speeders turned up too much, but just focusing right now. Okay. Now, where's my paint? Stained Ivory 09142. Get the keratin, the hooves, horns, etc. Still using that same fine brush on this one. Just going to arbitrarily start with the hooves. Now this will come out when I shade the rock, so... Oh, I just realized I forgot to do the clasp getting her hair tied back, so just carefully dot on that real quick. Okay. Okay, back to the bone. Try to keep in camera view here. And these horns, especially this dominant set, have a lot of nice ridges in them. So those will stand out quite nicely when I highlight them. Just doing one set of these spikes at a time. I know there's got to be a scientific name for them, but I'm not certain what that is right this second. Okay. Oh, did that cut on the, let's get that out of the chest there. The violet is, again, going to be darker than what I'm using to highlight, or not highlight, shade the skin with, so Blackened Steel 09205. And getting the pommel spike in the blade of her sword. I think I really slaughtered the English language on what I call it when I did the base coats. Looks like something out of Conan the Barbarian, actually. Alright, that's going to leave the flesh, the rock, and the dirt for shading, so we're roughly a little more than halfway there, so back in a minute. Okay, now to shade the flesh, Vampire Red. This is not the normal shader for this skin tone, but by doing this I intend to get a, what's the word I'm looking for, a semi-human look. I might go a little bit thinner than I normally would, maybe 2 to 3 parts water. This one, per 1 part paint. I want to make sure I get it inside her ears. Being careful around the horns. Yeah, I think that's just about the right amount of water to paint there. The back of her neck's a bit tricky, but it's kind of doing one section at a time. I'm going to end with the wings. Well, wings and tail, because that's the section I'm most likely to accidentally bump when as I work, so. And I mean bump with my hands, which will take the paint off the model and put it on me, which I'm more concerned about getting it off the model than I am in my hands, but I'm starting to ramble in a weird way. And this is kind of what I did for the other Nephilim that came with Lilith's boxed set. Nekima's new. I'm assuming she's going to get a box set. Probably will, because that's what they do with Masters now that she's been promoted, but it's not out yet. Looks like she's getting a new totem, so that'll probably be available through the special orders program Weird is doing as well. It's a little thick, so I'm just going to spread that around right there across her stomach. But again, while Lilith chose to adopt a human form so she could operate more clandestinely in Malifaux and other human settlements as needed, Nekima is not so subtle. In fact, it's that lack of subtlety that wound up giving Lilith the ability to take control of the Neverborn in the first place, or Nephilim in the first place, even though Nekima, being the older sibling, should have technically taken command. And in a second edition, Nekima had a rule for when taking her with Lilith, if Lilith went down, Nekima would basically get instant promoted to Master. This seam here, I believe, if I remember right, is just where the leg attached to the rest of the body. And that tail is going to make me really nervous when I highlight. Carefully getting nice solid coat there. Almost forgot the hand gripping the sword. Just make sure I get that. This is going to get a little tricky right here because I do not want to get any of this on her shoulder armor here. The pauldron. I'm okay if it gets on the claws, the wingtips a little bit. I think that's the right word. I'm not even sure, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to do it. I'm trying to leave a little of the base. Again, your shade is going to darken your base coat and change it up a little bit, but you can also get interesting effects by playing around with the colors you use. I find I can get something pretty disturbing looking if I start with a normal human skin tone and then add a decidedly inhuman color, especially something more neutral like a dark gray or like a gray or a blue. But this is nice too, and that little strip right there, we go, that was fighting me. Kind of holding this at a funny angle just for the sake of the camera. I find I have to do that quite a bit for the purpose of these videos, but am I doing on frame drop and all that? Not too bad. Again, I have very limited space to work with, so I have to have my monitor physically behind me when I do this, which that's part of the problem with the blur. There's nothing I can do about that until I've changed up to a larger space, which is a long-term goal that I don't know when I'll achieve that. It's long-term, so. And this is really getting into those crevices and the folds in the wing, and that is exactly what I want. For letting this sink into the most recessed areas that will darken those. And then when I combine it with the highlight, it'll make the raised areas pop more. Okay, that's it for the skin tone. But now I can take Stormy Gray 09088 and get the rock. I've got a little out of focus there for a minute. Alright, I'm just going to have to take it that Nekima is just fighting me on this focus thing, so be it. Mix that up, 1 part to paint, or 1 part water to 1 part paint. I'm just going to start on the tallest portion of it here. Getting a little bit extra where the shade on the hoof cut onto the stone. Just going to kind of do this one section at a time. And again, the base insert is just something I quickly hand sculpted. If a model has a slot base with a tab for on the model's feet, then I will generally use flock or other materials for the basing, but if it glues fairly flatly to the surface of the base, then I will do something like this. Except for Warhammer 40,000 at this point, but I might start doing this for that game as well. But okay, starting to ramble. There's the shading. Got one more color to shade, which would be the dirt, and then I can move on and start highlighting and detailing. So, focus, please. So there we go. That's almost all the shading, so back in a minute to finish that up. Okay, some of this is still drying, but it's dry enough I can move on. Pure Black 09037. I'm going to do two things with this right now. First, I'm going to take a detail brush just to fill in her eyes. One thing I am doing with most of my Neverborn, not necessarily all of them, is dead black eyes. It's kind of a nod to the urban legend of black-eyed children. It's pretty good. And now thinning with 2 to 3 parts water to 1 part paint, because you'll need to, with darker colors, you need to use a little more water, especially straight black like this. Just darken the mud here. And this was maybe overly simple to skull, just a thin layer of putty and a few random strokes of a tool to make it look kind of lumpy. Gonna pop those bubbles there. And once that dries completely, I can highlight and wrap up. Okay, time to highlight. Going to need a ragged feathered brush for this, something along the lines of that. And where is it? Fair Highlights 09048. Alright, no water, straight paint only. I'm going to take our ragged brush and then rub most of the paint out on a paper towel till it looks like there's next to nothing left. And dust the area to be affected, and I'm focusing on the readily visible areas. Okay, and that tail is still making me nervous, but we got it. Going against raised edges. Yeah, I did something to my thumb. I'm not sure what's really rough shape. Refreshing as necessary. And in this stage, the paint will dry very quickly, almost instantly, so that only gives you about a second to rub off any paint that ends up somewhere you don't want it. But it also means you can work very quickly. A little more on the face, I think. Next one, how about Blond Highlight 09258. So yeah, having that red shade on the skin really turns it, makes it less human, but still familiar enough to human patterns to draw the parallel and which one next? How about the horns? Yeah, sure. So 09144 Creamy Ivory. Okay, there we go. That one was just running a little low. Again, this is a triad where I have spares available to me. Lightly dusting the horns and going against the ridges in them. Amethyst purple 09024. Oh boy, it's fighting me. If I can get the grip on the brush I want. There we go. Alright. How about True Silver 09207? Steel next. Now, dropped a few frames, but not too horribly many at this point, but oh boy. There we go, there's the brush I want. This makes me almost as nervous as the tail did. See that wiggling there? That isn't good, but I think we'll be alright. Okay. I just realized I forgot to do her, the cord holding her ponytail up. Let's grab a different brush and just real quick do that. Just barely touching it. I'll make sure I get my brush cleaned thoroughly though. New gold 09051. Oh boy, I'm gonna have to rework my setup over here. My brushes are really tangled up. I especially want to get the hilt of the sword here. Just give that skull decoration a nice burnished coat. Misty Gray 09090. That might be enough to do the job. This should be fine. Again, going against the edges here. What a woodworker would call going against the grain. Which helps catch the paint. Field Brown 09161. Which has a bad lid and is giving me grief trying to close it. Knocked out one. And this one. Size and shape are important to brush selection for any step of this process. Okay, now taking pure black 09037 again. And switching to a flathead brush. Using just enough water to thin the paint, same as a base coat. So I'll load that up and carefully line the edge now. Going up to the dirt, but not on it if I can help it. I'm not going to need to number this one because Nekima is one of a kind. Right here, I'm just barely using, I'm not using any pressure at all. I'm just gripping just enough. And that needs to dry, but that is it. Nekima of the Neverborn faction. So, I am continuing on with Malifaux, going to another new faction. Until next time, I am Ian Stuckey with Mastermind Games, signing out.